Have you ever wondered what really happens to our soul as we grow older? Why do we feel that inexplicable inner change after hitting 60? Is there something deeper going on beyond the physical transformations we all see? Today, I'm going to share with you a perspective that is rarely discussed in our society, a kind of knowledge that can completely change the way you see aging, whether it's your own or that of someone you love. The truth is that we talk a lot about physical care in our later years, about illnesses, retirement, but we almost never discuss what happens spiritually with older people. It's like there's an awkward silence, a taboo about what truly matters, the soul's journey in the final years of our earthly life, and that silence ends up creating fear, insecurity, and even despair in many hearts. If this content is touching something inside you, don't forget to like this video right now and subscribe to the channel. Every like helps this message reach someone who might be facing this stage of life in silence and needing these exact words. Edgar Cayce wasn't a typical religious leader. He didn't create dogmas, didn't found churches, and he didn't demand followers. This simple man from Kentucky in the United States became known as the sleeping prophet because, in a deep trance state, he accessed an expanded kind of consciousness that revealed extraordinary information about the nature of the human soul, about life and death. What makes Cayce's teaching so fascinating is that he didn't talk in abstract theories, but about real experiences of the soul. He described in detail how our consciousness transforms in old age and what really happens during and after the process we call death. And the most surprising part, many of his descriptions match accounts of near-death experiences documented decades later by renowned researchers. Cayce offered us a revolutionary view. Old age isn't a sad decline leading to the end, but a phase of intense spiritual maturity where the soul starts preparing for its next big transition. It's a phase where, gradually, we let go of material illusions and begin reconnecting with our true spiritual nature. According to Edgar Cayce, something extraordinary happens to our soul after 60. It starts a natural process of expansion and release. While the physical body may seem to decline, the soul is actually setting itself free, gaining lightness and clarity. It's as if the bonds that keep us attached to our material identity are slowly loosening. Have you noticed how many elderly people develop a calm wisdom and a natural detachment from things that once seemed so important? That obsession with status, appearance, or material accumulation, all that often gives way to a deeper appreciation for relationships, affection, and the small joys of everyday life. It isn't a coincidence. It's the soul beginning to free itself from the ego, recognizing what really matters. Cayce explained that this process isn't random or tragic. It's a loving preparation. The soul knows exactly what it's doing. The forgetfulness, the decreased attachment to material things, the need for silence and reflection. All of this is part of a natural transition plan. It's like we are slowly detaching from this plane to prepare for the next one. Have you ever stopped to wonder why many elderly people start talking about those who have already passed away as if they were still present? Why do so many report vivid dreams about deceased family members or places from the past? Conventional medicine often labels this as mental confusion or cognitive decline, but Cayce offers us a much deeper and more beautiful explanation. According to his teachings, the veil between the physical and spiritual dimensions naturally becomes thinner in old age. An older person isn't confused. They're really starting to notice a broader reality that has always been there, but that our material senses usually do not pick up. It's as if, bit by bit, we gain a kind of double vision. We still see the physical world, but we also begin to glimpse the spiritual world that awaits us. This is one of the reasons why we should listen to what the elderly have to say about their perceptions and feelings with much more attention and respect. They aren't losing contact with reality, they're actually widening their perception to include dimensions beyond the material. Before we continue with this fascinating journey, I'd like to ask you to leave a comment if you've noticed any of these signs in older people in your family or even in yourself if you're at that stage of life. Your story might help others better understand this natural and profound process. And don't forget to share this video with someone who could benefit from this transformative perspective. One of the most misunderstood and painful aspects of old age is the physical suffering that often comes with it. Why do so many people face pain, limitations, and increasing difficulties in their later years? If life has a spiritual purpose, how can we explain this apparent abandonment at the end of the journey? Edgar Cayce brought a revolutionary perspective on this issue that torments entire families. According to Cayce's readings, physical suffering in old age isn't a punishment or a divine abandonment. It is, paradoxically, a process of refining and releasing the soul. Every ache, every limitation serves a specific purpose: to help the person gradually detach from an exclusive identification with the physical body. It's like the soul is saying, "You are not just this suffering body, you are so much more." This understanding changes everything. Physical pain, although real and deserving relief, also carries an invitation to transcendence. Many elderly people report that even in the midst of physical suffering, they experience moments of extraordinary spiritual clarity, deep insights about life, and an inexplicable peace. It's as if the soul, confronted by the body's limitations, begins to expand beyond it, preparing for the final flight we call death. Have you ever noticed how some people, in the days or weeks before passing, develop a surprising lucidity? How they become more loving, wiser, more connected? Cayce explained that this isn't a coincidence, but a natural part of the transition process. The soul, on the verge of complete liberation, experiences an expansion of consciousness that often shows up even in people who were confused or debilitated. This is one of Cayce's most beautiful revelations. Death isn't a sudden blackout of consciousness, but a gradual awakening to a broader reality. In the final days, many elderly people begin to see loved ones who have already departed, have conversations with beings that their family members can't see, and describe luminous places or landscapes of extraordinary beauty. Conventional medicine usually attributes this to a lack of oxygen in the brain or medication effects, but Cayce suggests something much deeper. The person is literally with one foot in each reality. That's why many elderly people, close to the time of passing, talk about having to go, catching a train, or being late for a trip. It isn't delirium, it's a real sense that there's a call, a designated moment, an imminent transition for which the soul is consciously preparing. Family members who understand this process can offer not only physical care, but also spiritual support, acknowledging and respecting that unique journey of the soul. There is a pattern that repeats in countless deathbeds: the deep desire for reconciliation. Why do so many elderly people, when they sense the approach of passing, express an urgent need to forgive and be forgiven? Why do unresolved issues from decades ago suddenly become so important? Edgar Cayce offered deep insights into this universal phenomenon. According to Cayce, the soul naturally seeks harmony before the transition. It isn't just a psychological impulse, it is a deep spiritual need. The soul understands, on a level that goes beyond our day-to-day consciousness, that unresolved emotional baggage can become weights that hinder its journey after physical life. Forgiveness isn't just a moral gesture, it is an act of spiritual liberation. This is perhaps the most practical and transformative teaching from Cayce about the end of life. Don't wait until your last moments to seek reconciliation and forgiveness. A person who builds the habit of forgiving throughout life, both forgiving themselves and others, prepares the way for a smoother, more peaceful transition. Those who learn to let go of grudges, resentments, and guilt while they still have health and mental clarity are doing the most important spiritual work in preparation for what comes next. It's amazing how many elderly people, even those with advanced dementia, often regain enough lucidity to express forgiveness or ask for reconciliation in their final moments. The soul knows exactly what needs to be resolved before leaving, and it often rallies the last energies of the physical body to complete that essential work. Have you ever noticed how older people often say, "Time is passing by faster," or how they seem disinterested in news, trends, and concerns that captivate the young? Edgar Cayce explained that this isn't just a subjective impression or a detachment from the world. It's a profound transformation in consciousness that naturally happens with the soul's maturity. According to Cayce's readings, after 60, the soul begins to perceive time differently, closer to the spiritual reality where past, present, and future exist simultaneously. The elderly start to experience what mystics call eternal time, a perception where decades can feel like moments and where small instances can hold eternities of meaning. That's why many older people vividly recall old memories as if they were happening right now, while recent events sometimes seem hazy. This shift in the perception of time comes with a deep reevaluation of values. Things that society considers important, status, possessions, physical appearance, naturally lose their relevance, while things that were once overlooked gain inestimable value. A grandchild's smile, a friend's visit, the song of a bird in the morning. It isn't a less enriched life, as our materialistic culture would suggest, but rather a refinement of perception. The soul is learning to value what will really matter on the journey beyond physical life. If death isn't an end, but a transition, how can we prepare properly for it? Cayce emphasized that preparing for death isn't something that starts in the last days or months, but a continuous process that ideally lasts a lifetime. However, he also offered specific guidance for those who accompany elderly people in their final journey. One of Cayce's most important revelations is that the spiritual environment around the elderly profoundly affects their transition. When a person is surrounded by fear, denial, anger, or unresolved family conflicts, their soul may experience confusion and difficulty in letting go. On the other hand, when an older person is in an atmosphere of acceptance, love, and spiritual understanding, the transition tends to be smoother and more conscious. This places a sacred responsibility on family members and caregivers to learn to support the transition process with awareness and love, offering not only physical care, but also spiritual support. This means being willing to talk openly about death when the elderly express that desire, respecting their spiritual perceptions even when they seem strange, and creating a peaceful space where the soul can gradually complete its process of detachment. Cayce suggested simple but profound practices, reading significant spiritual texts to the person even when they seem unconscious, playing music that uplifts the soul, keeping the environment calm and harmonious, and most importantly, verbally expressing love and gratitude, reaffirming that it's okay to move on when the time is right. In the final days and hours of life, the soul often sends clear signals of its imminent transition. Edgar Cayce described these signals in surprisingly detailed ways, providing a map for family members and caregivers who want to consciously accompany this sacred process. Understanding these signs can transform what many see as just a moment of loss into an experience of deep spiritual beauty. One of the most common signs is what Cayce called a farewell rehearsal, periods where the person seems to be leaving, with irregular breathing, an apparent disconnection from the environment, followed by a sudden return to normal consciousness. This isn't just a physiological phenomenon, but a process where the soul is literally rehearsing the act of letting go, like a bird testing its wings before the final flight. Another frequently misunderstood sign is when the person starts talking about needing to pack up, catching a train, or going home, even when they're in their own residence. According to Cayce, this isn't mental confusion, but a real perception of the imminent journey. The soul is communicating through the vocabulary and metaphors it has available, trying to express something that goes beyond our everyday language. Perhaps the most extraordinary sign is what hospice caregivers call terminal lucidity, moments of surprising clarity that often occur shortly before passing, when even people who have been unconscious for days suddenly open their eyes, recognize their loved ones, and sometimes share one last profound message before peacefully leaving. Cayce explained that in these moments, the soul is partially freed from the limitations of the ailing body, experiencing a glimpse of the expanded consciousness that awaits it. Recognizing and respecting these signs allows family members and caregivers to offer the most appropriate support at every stage of the transition, honoring the unique and sacred process that each soul undergoes on its journey back to the spiritual realm. Going against the materialistic view that permeates our society, Edgar Cayce was adamant that death isn't an end, but a continuation. Consciousness doesn't simply go out, it expands. The soul doesn't vanish, it frees itself. And perhaps the most surprising part, the bond between those who pass and those who remain isn't completely broken. It just transforms into something subtler and, in a way, even deeper. Cayce explained that after the physical transition, the soul goes through a period of reviewing and integrating its earthly experiences. It's like watching the movie of your life, not with harsh judgment, but with a loving understanding of the purposes behind every experience. During this period, which may last the equivalent of days or weeks in our earthly time, the soul still holds a special connection with its loved ones. That is why so many people report vivid dreams, sensations of presence, or even synchronistic experiences in the weeks following the departure of a loved one. According to Cayce, these aren't just manifestations of our grief or imagination. They are real, albeit subtle, communications from the soul that has completed its transition and wishes to send one last message of love and reassurance. The true legacy of a life isn't found only in the material possessions we leave behind, but in the energetic and spiritual influence that remains in the hearts of those we love. Like ripples that continue to spread long after a stone has hit the water, our acts of love, compassion, and wisdom continue to influence the world even after our physical departure. One of the most comforting revelations from Edgar Cayce's readings is his description of what happens when the soul completes its transition to the spiritual realm. Far from being a strange or frightening place, Cayce describes a process of a loving reunion with like-minded souls who have already made that journey before, family members, friends, and companions from other lives who come to welcome and guide the soul in its adjustment to spiritual reality. This perspective completely changes our understanding of what it means to pass away. We aren't sending our loved ones off to an unknown void, but rather to a joyful reunion with those who went before them. Death, seen from this angle, isn't a definitive separation, but a temporary departure, like someone traveling ahead to prepare the way. Cayce explained that after a period of rest and integration, the soul continues its evolutionary journey. Some choose to return to earthly experience for new lessons, others move on to different dimensions of existence. But the important thing is that consciousness, the essential individuality, the deep self, remains intact, enriched by every experience on earth. This understanding brings a profound sense of continuity to human existence. We aren't just fleeting creatures born from chance and destined to be forgotten. We are eternal beings on a journey of conscious evolution, for whom physical life represents a precious chapter, but not the whole story. We've reached the end of this journey through Edgar Cayce's teachings on the soul in old age and after physical death. But in truth, we're only at the beginning of a new way to understand our existence. How does our life change when we truly absorb this perspective? How do we transform this knowledge into a new way of living and aging? First of all, this understanding invites us to deeply reevaluate how we treat our elderly. If old age isn't a sad decline but a spiritual maturation, then every wrinkle, every gray hair, every slower movement carries a dignity and wisdom that deserve our deepest respect. Older people aren't a burden on society. They are its teachers, its elders, bearing wisdom that goes far beyond just intellectual knowledge. Secondly, this view frees us from the paralyzing fear of death that haunts our culture. When we understand that death isn't an end, but a transition, we can live more fully, more authentically, without the constant anxiety of trying to escape the inevitable. That doesn't mean denying grief or the pain of physical separation. Those feelings are natural and important, but it does mean that even amid the pain, we can find a greater meaning, a deeper understanding. Finally, this perspective invites us to live each day with more awareness and purpose. If earthly life is a school for the soul, then every experience, the joyful and the painful, carries a potential for growth and evolution. Nothing is wasted, nothing is without meaning in the spiritual economy of existence. Every act of love, every moment of compassion, every gesture of forgiveness not only transforms our current life, but echoes into eternity. If this content touched your heart, please share it with someone who might be facing aging or the proximity of death, whether in themselves or in a loved one. Also, leave your own experiences and reflections on this topic in the comments. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear right now. And remember, the end of physical life isn't the end of the journey, but just a curve in the road. The soul continues, love remains, and one day, Beyond time and space as we know them, we will meet again. This isn't just a comforting hope in the views of Edgar Cayce and countless mystics throughout the ages. It is a reality more concrete than the material world our physical senses perceive. Subscribe to the channel and hit like to get access to more stories like this. Thank you for joining me on this journey of discovery. Until we meet again, may your soul flourish in wisdom, compassion, and peace.